My name is Jim Fregonara, and I work at the West Virginia DNR. I work for the Wildlife Diversities Unit, and I have all different kinds of responsibilities. And part of my job is to help coordinate our Wild Yards program.
Okay. Could you tell me a little bit more about the Wild Yards program?
Sure. Yeah, our Wild Yards program, we started it back around the mid 90s or so. And what it is, it's a program that encourages the general public to encourage wildlife on their property. And we like to encourage folks to have a water source for wildlife, shelter for wildlife. It could be simple as a nest box for a bluebird or something like that. And we also encourage food and space. And with the food is we like to have people plant native plants to West Virginia. So folks will work on their property. These last couple of years it was very, very popular with folks staying home, with COVID working around their house. And they can contact our office and we'll send them some information about the Wild Yards program and what to plant and what not to plant. And they can make a little diagram of their property and then send that in, and we'll look at their application. And if everything looks good, we'll send them a really nice sign. I've got a sign right here. It's our, let's get this right, our West Virginia Wild Yard sign. And it's made out of metal. And we have about, I think about 300 or so wild yards throughout West Virginia, starting from the 90s. It's gaining more popularity. And it's kind of based on the National Wildlife Federation's program. They have a certifiable program where you apply, and then I think you have to fill out an application and send that in, and they'll send you a nice sign. Not as nice as this one, of course. And there's you have to pay a little bit. I'm not sure what it is now, but this is actually free. So we'll send you this metal sign, and you can post that on your property, just stating that this property is a West Virginia wild yard.
Okay, so if people are interested in it, what is the best way for them to get information? Is there like a web page or
they
a phone
can look
number?
at the DNR website, or they can just call our office, and we'll send them an information packet that kind of looks like this, just our Wild Yards packet. And in here is an application at the very end that you can fill out and send that back. And the application just lets us know that where you live, the size of the property, is it a private resident or corporate land, and what your neighborhood looks like. And it also lets us know if you're planning on adding more, or if you want to have certain types of plantings. It will let us know that you know about invasive plants and the dangers of them. And so it just, for example, here is a whole page on what you hope to do in the future. So like this person is going to put some brush piles up that's going to act as cover. They're planning on putting some nest boxes up to attracting birds, suet feeders or bird feeders to attract, various woodpeckers and other kinds of birds. And one thing too is that you don't have to have a huge chunk of land to be a certifiable wild yard. You can live in an apartment building, and you can have a bird feeder out back, or a bird bath, or a few plants, native plants. You don't have to have acres and acres. Now, that is nice if you do have that much land, and then you really have all kinds of options. You can leave certain parts of your yard, just let it go into native wildflowers for all of our pollinators, and you can have brush piles and that. Or if you have any kind of dead standing trees, we encourage you can leave those standing. Of course, as long as they're not going to fall on your house or on a shed or anything like that, as long as it's safe, you can leave standing wood there, and woodpeckers will come and put holes in them, and owls might come and live in there. And even when the tree falls, we encourage just a lot of natural woody debris on the ground to attract all kinds of wildlife. And when people are talking about wildlife too, a lot of them think about the big charismatic wildlife like the bears and deer and that, and that's fine too, but we're also encouraging smaller critters like insects and salamanders and maybe some frogs and toads if you have the right habitat for those animals. So it's a mixture of everything. And one thing too, you have to be careful, since you are kind of gardening for wildlife, you may be attracting wildlife that you may not want. For example, if you're going to be putting up suet cake feeders for birds or bird feeders and other kinds of food for wildlife, you may be attracting bears or possums or skunks. And so that if that happens, then we would encourage you to stop providing that food and just provide, native plants and native vegetation.
Yeah, I find like I have a meadow garden at home.
Sure.
And one benefit that was kind of unexpected of it is it kind of attracts animals. Instead of going to my vegetable garden, they're going to that area of the yard instead. So
sure, yeah.
One of the unexpected benefits.
Yeah. And now there's a really big push for all of our native pollinators. Pollinators have gotten kind of hit hard, and people realize how important they are to pollinate the food that we eat too. So just by providing like what you have, just a brushy area will attract all kinds of butterflies and bees and other flying insects that will pollinate those plants too. So that's really important to have too.
Well, that's some great information. And as you said, the DNR website is a great place to go to find more information on it.
Right, yeah. And they can contact us and we'll send them a little booklet or just some information. And then they can fill out the application and make a little map of their property. It doesn't have to be very thorough, just to kind of let us know that you do have shelter, food, and water and space for the animals. And like I said, you don't have to build a giant pond to attract fish and other animals like that. You can have just a simple bird bath. And we also encourage folks too, that if they do have like bird baths or bird houses, that they keep them clean. That every nesting season they'll go in and clean out all the debris from the nest boxes. And they'll also disinfect and clean all the bird baths too, because we want to make sure that we're not harming the wildlife too, because bird baths is a source for a lot of the congregating animals to meet. And if one animal is diseased, there's a real good chance it might give it to somebody else. So we want that to happen.
Yeah. Well, this is great information, and thank you for sharing.
Sure enough, Jack. Glad to help.